Hello, everybody. This is Father Pete McCormick, and this is the third installment of Fighting Irish Fellowship. I am joined by 3 Notre Dame student athletes and very much looking forward to our conversation today. Our conversation will focus on 2 particular aspects of what's happening in our world today. As the nation mourns and with the passing of George Floyd and the police brutality that we have seen over the course of the past several months and years, conversations around race, conversations around inclusivity have sprung up and are at the heart of what we as a nation are discussing at this point. We at Notre Dame are not exempt from this. We at Notre Dame are thinking about this and at times have our own challenges and struggles. And so what we are seeking to do over the course of this conversation is really twofold: to begin to bring our student athletes to be able to voice their own insights about what is happening, but also to provide the wisdom that they have accumulated over the course of their time as student athletes, to begin to speak about how it is that they have learned to love the other, love another who may be very different from them, and to continue to seek and to aspire towards greatness in many ways. So with that, the real content are the other people who are in this room. And so I will make my way around our Zoom conference call here, and then we can begin to have a little bit more of a conversation here. To begin with, representing the Notre Dame football team is Daelin Hayes. To represent the volleyball team is Sydney Bent. And to represent the women's basketball team is Sam Brunelle. They are all here today and have been so gracious in their willingness to be a part of this conversation. So Sam, maybe I'll start with you before we get into kind of the meat of our conversation. If you could just say a little bit about where you're calling in from, and then we'll just work our way right around our conference call here.
Yeah, so I'm actually calling in from South Bend right now. I actually have to move out tomorrow, so I'm calling in from my roommate's house. And yeah, so I'm in South Bend right now.
Great, great. How about you, Sydney?
I'm calling in from Miami, Florida at my childhood home. So just chilling here, yeah.
Great. How about you, Daelin?
I am reporting back from sunny South Bend, right here in my home under the dome. But I just got back about a month ago, so I'm excited to be here.
Well, listen, I mean, 3 of the 4 of us are all in South Bend. Sydney, you got to get with it. South Bend is the happening place to be.
No, that's where the party's at.
So, as I said at the very beginning, so much has happened over the course of even the past week. And with the news ever evolving, this moment in time, it gives us a chance to reflect upon how it is striking each of us. And so I have no expectation of placing the initial kind of entrance into this conversation on any one person. But if someone wants to say, yeah, I'm in and I'm willing to take it, the question I have is, as we think about the death of George Floyd, as we think about all of the conversations, the peaceful protests, the challenges that have been expressed over the course of the past week, and then throughout the course of the past years, how does this moment in time strike you?
I guess I can start. So when I first saw everything, like I had written a statement, and the first thing that I thought about was like fear, and it's just kind of something being a young Black male who's a football player. So, like just size in general, like that it's just kind of something that we're brought and taught up is just kind of to be cautious, to be cautious in situations. You have the talks with your parents about conflict with cops, conflicts, in general, attending a predominantly white institution, just to how to go about these things and how to handle situations and not to come off as threatening. So, the first time I saw the video, and a lot of these videos, man, where guys aren't even, doing anything to violently, portray themselves as violent people, to have their lives taken in spite of that, like, it just kind of felt kind of helpless at the moment, afraid, because, this could have easily been me. This could have easily been my 2 younger brothers. This could have easily been my teammates who was in this situation. And you just never know how these things are going to play out. And on top of that, it's almost like insult to injury when you see that these people are charged with little to no, serious repercussions. So, just kind of having that Having that in the back of my mind, it was the first thing that struck me was fear. Just, you know, that was really it.
Daelin, thank you, man. Thank you so much for that. Sydney, Sam, how about for the two of you?
I posted on my Instagram a couple of days ago talking about this, and the first feelings that sort of came to mind when just after reevaluating everything that had happened was sadness, because it just seems like a lot of people don't value the lives of African American people, and there's such little regard. And you know, throughout these protests, people are, you know, criticizing property damage more than they're criticizing these officers and other people who have been murdering Black people for no reason. And that just really, like I said before, makes me sad, because I want so badly for this country to love me, and it just really doesn't seem like me and other people of color, but especially Black people, are receiving any love or protection. So those were my first impressions and my first feelings about this whole situation.
Thank you, Sydney.
Yeah, honestly, it's just crazy to me, because I feel like this is just too much of a norm kind of thing. And obviously I'll never be able to like understand, you know, people of color and their side of it, because I'm white. And I think it's just a disappointment that these police officers who are white are are representing, you know, other white people. And I feel like it's disappointing to see that happen. And I have obviously so many friends of color, and I know it's all love and we love each other, but you know, like Sydney was saying, I just kind of wish our country would obviously just fight to just love everybody, because we're all the same. And I actually have a Bible verse right here that's kind of been speaking volumes to me, and it's actually tattooed on my wrist. It's really important to me, and it's Micah 6:8, and it says, "The Lord has shown you what is good. He has told you what he requires of you. You must act with justice. You must love to show mercy, and you must be humble as you live in the sight of your God." And the biggest part of that right now is acting with justice. And, you know, obviously you have to show love to have mercy. And I feel like our country really needs that right now. And I feel like that verse just speaks volume.
Sam, maybe if I could build off of this and then to pivot back to Daelin and Sydney, you know, what about that particular verse most strikes you? Like what about that verse kind of like, well, moves you to tattoo it to your very self?
Yeah, I mean, acting with justice, and I feel like there's just so much injustice that part right there is just like powerful in itself, because there is so much injustice and we have to learn to act with justice. And obviously, like with the protests going on, I think that's important. I think it's important for people's voices to be heard on this matter, because it is important and it's a huge thing in our country, and it has been for years. And obviously I feel like it's not really, you know, building and getting anywhere, and it's sad. It's really sad to see. And obviously, like showing love like to one another. And I feel like, yeah, some of us get that, but there's a lot of people who don't. And I feel like that's something that our country really needs to improve on.
So Daelin and Sydney, you both talked about fear, talked about sadness. When you think about a just response to those emotions, what does that look like? How do we respond? I mean, the beauty of being a Notre Dame student athlete is that you're not only supremely talented on the football field, the volleyball court, the basketball court. Sydney, they call it a volleyball court, correct? Am I using my terms correctly here? I want to make sure that.
Okay. Yeah.
But not only are you supremely talented in your area of play, but you are also supremely talented in the classroom. So when you think about the appropriate response to fear, to sadness through the lens of justice, right? What does that look like for you guys?
For me, the first thing that I even said this. So I wrote a statement yesterday, And, you know, I started it off with expressing how I initially felt about it, but I didn't, it took me about 3 to 4 days to like really capture, you know, what exactly I wanted to say. But in that, you know, what I did was, what I said was that, you know, now is no longer the time for fear. Like now is the time to stand up boldly and declare that enough is enough. But I also said something that I kind of wanted to just read off if I could.
For sure.
What I said was to our non-people of color, it's time to acknowledge, educate, and most importantly, act. Acknowledge both your privilege and that racism is still a prevalent issue in our country. Educate yourself on the numerous different ways that racism manifests itself in our everyday lives. And finally, take action. Ignorance is no longer an excuse. And, you know, like just with, you know, the difference between right and wrong. You know that a man being handcuffed and having a knee placed on his neck and being suffocated to death in broad daylight is wrong. No, ignorance is no longer an excuse. You see what's wrong. You guys, you just have to be bold enough to stand up and say enough is enough. You don't have to be black to do that. You don't have to share this African-American experience, but to voice what's right and what's wrong. It doesn't matter. Right and wrong is colorless. It goes beyond gender, goes beyond color, goes beyond socioeconomic status, all of that. So, you know, it's time to stand up, you know, even if you're not educated, you know, take the time to educate yourself, to acknowledge it, not to turn a blind eye to it, and stand up against it.
I think that the most effective way to kind of just inform yourself about what's right and what's wrong is to have conversation. And in general, race is a very touchy subject, and I think that causes a lot of people to shy away from discussion of it because those are uncomfortable topics. But I think that the best way to learn about it is to talk about it. And so that's why if I have white friends, I encourage them that if you earnestly have a question about race relations or, you know, how I feel doing certain things, like how I feel talking to police officers, how I feel walking around during campus, and just having those conversations, it becomes less of a taboo and more of just an ongoing conversation that everyone can have and not feel like they're not allowed to have it.
I love that answer, right? I mean, that's exactly what we're doing here. The fact is, none of us have all the answers, but I think, I do believe we're people of goodwill who want truth, and we want to represent and respect the dignity of every single person. How do you get at that? You have conversations like this, right? It's a great insight. Daelin, I'll kick it back to you if you want it.
I feel like that's a really layered question, personally. I feel like that, like, you know, what I was more so addressing was the blatant, like, we have so many blatant instances where, you know, these things are, you know what I'm saying? You can reference these
That's right,
like cases and that, like, and things like that. So I'm talking about more so an education and an awareness and the call to action from those moments in itself. But I mean, I guess you can talk about in general, like we were talking, our defense had a meeting, and, you know, like we were kind of addressing, I feel like a lot of times people try to address this issue in a two-sided, either you're racist or you're not. And I don't feel like that. I feel like it's, you know what I'm saying, there's a large group of people who are not racist, who don't have any prejudice towards a person, but just don't know, aren't informed, may say something. So, like, you know, guys mentioned, a lot of guys for the first, like they get into a classroom and a girl comes up to them and said, this is the first time I've had a class with a black guy. You know, guys in the dorms, you know, typically haven't, you know, been exposed to more ethnicities than their own. So, you know, that point, just spending more time and investment in who people are is colorless, man. Like, if I love this guy, if I truly have an interest in this guy, if I value this person, it doesn't matter where they come from. It doesn't matter what they look like. My interest is in you. You know, I love you. I have interest in you. I care about you. So I'm going to put that time in to get to know you better. Like, it's just like anything. I don't think that it's really something that you can really pinpoint as like, this is what you're going to do, take these steps, blah, blah, blah. But it's just kind of like a natural progression, you know, without any prejudice or any bias.
What I hear you both saying, Daelin and Sydney, is that there's a there's a humanizing quality to what ultimately undermines racist tendencies. Finding time to have conversations, finding time to get to know another person beyond what may just be the color of their skin or what we think that we might know about them. So finding those moments in which we can be genuinely curious about the other. I'd be interested to hear a little bit about what's your all's approach for kind of breaking down those barriers and getting to know people for who they are.
I feel like part of it's when like I meet somebody new, or like if I meet an African American, like male or female, like the first thing when I see them, like I'm not thinking, oh, they're Black or oh, they're Asian or something like that. Like I'm trying to just get to know that person. I'm going to ask you your name. I'm going to ask you how you're doing. And it's going to go from there. Like I'm not thinking color. I think like that's the first way that it should be approached. It shouldn't be, oh, he's Black or oh, he's Asian, that kind of thing. You know, I just feel like that's kind of how I approach things. And I feel like some people struggle with that maybe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Helpful, Sam, helpful. So there's an aspect of what you're hoping to do is see into the person as opposed necessarily to seeing the color of their skin.
Right.
Other approaches here for breaking down some of those barriers, for kind of humanizing another person.
You know, like me coming to Notre Dame, I honestly hadn't been around this type of, you know, demographic before. Like, you know, just privy to like a lot. And I think like living in the dorms and just not really having an opinion, you know, just kind of letting my guard down about it. Because like even like what Sam was saying, like even upon your initial, you know, hey, how are you, blah, blah, blah. Like if this is somebody you know what I'm saying, you're getting to know better, you're going to spend a lot of time with this person. And there's going to be situations where, you know, things are going to come up. You're going to have to, like, you know, you're going to reach, there's going to be a point where you guys don't have anything in common, you know, or just kind of like, just kind of learn from each other. You know, you kind of learn about, you know, different aspects. Like in our dorm, like we, guys, one shout out 1A, by the way, O'Neill 1A. But like with our guys, you know, it was a ton of things, man. Like what is it called? Spike ball? Spike ball? Like they do this, I don't know if that's necessarily a white or Black thing, but like I had never seen or heard of spike ball ever in my life. Never threw a frisbee, like being in the gazebo things, like I don't know, like it's just like we were just dudes just kicking it, like just kind of getting to know each other, you know, things that we've gone through. You know, I grew up in a single parent household. You know, that's kind of like a stereotype, an African American stereotype. But I have a lot of guys in my section, man, had parents that gone through divorce, so they had been kind of going back between having two parents and then going to being in a single parent household, and how that was an adjustment, and talking about that, and just kind of like just kind of sharing our experiences about it, and just kind of like it made us closer. So, you know, some of my closest friends came from being in the dorm and being exposed, having an open mind, and just being able to listen and hear people for their experiences and kind of learning and just taking things from it and going from there.
That's right. And it's interesting, right? Some of those things that you encountered, Daelin, came as a result of you being in close proximity to those people, right? Being in and around them. And I think sometimes in our society, it's just, you know, we log on to the internet, we watch a video clip, or we distance ourselves so that really coming to know another person isn't necessarily an option that's afforded us. And we kind of stay safe with just the people that make us feel comfortable, as opposed to genuinely going out and having conversations like what we're having right here, which is to kind of understand, you know, one of the things that I think about a lot as a priest is that the creativity and the glory of God is expressed in all human beings. And you think about the variety of people. And so on one hand, you could look at other people as like, that's scary because that's different from me. But on the other hand, you could also look at it as to say, this is a glorious creature that's been created by God that I have the chance to come to know, to understand, to learn more about. And I wonder if that isn't a helpful approach as we think about, you know, next steps forward. Sydney, when you think about, you know, your own experience of getting to know and deepening these kind of relationships, you've already talked about conversations. But I'm just wondering if you've got any other insights about how you go about humanizing another person, forming relationships with people that maybe you otherwise wouldn't think to yourself, yeah, this is going to be a good friend of mine.
So throughout middle school and high school, I went to a predominantly white upper class middle school and high school. And just to give some perspective, in each grade, there were maybe 5 to 8 Black kids. So the majority of the time when I was in a class, I was the only Black kid in there. And at first, that was very scary. And I really had my guard up because I was afraid of what people might think of me if I sort of let those guards down. But then I think at some point, I don't know if I did it consciously or unconsciously, but I, after a certain point, realized that if I want to have close relationships with these people, I'm going to need to be vulnerable and sort of open up more to them and not have my guard up so much. And I think it has to go both ways. Like if I were to look at, the people at my school, rich, white, and, just demonize them because of their privilege, then I think that I wouldn't have been able to make close connections. And I think vice versa, if they had looked at me and think, oh, Black athlete, middle class family, and then demonize me, there just would have always been that disconnect of us not being able to get to know each other and know each other's struggles. Mm-hmm. So I think that's one thing. If we all just come together and not in a combative way, but in a way where we're genuinely trying to understand each other's fundamental attributes and maybe fundamental differences that, because everyone's different, then I really think that's a good way to start to humanize each other, because then you get less into the differences, and when you show your vulnerabilities, you're able to relate to the other person more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Just kind of saying the same thing, just like kind of letting your guard down. And, and that takes a lot of humility, to kind of like let go of what what you think is true, what you've experienced, to say, what, my experiences, although you don't share them, mine aren't any more valuable than yours are than yours are to me. So I think like that really is a huge point, just being vulnerable. And being, what I'm saying, and instilling a lot of humility and understand, like, to seek wisdom, like to seek more understanding of this person's experience, to seek more, like, because a lot of people, it's frustrating. Sometimes you don't want to be around something that's unfamiliar to you. You don't want to step outside that comfort zone. You want to stick and cling to what you know. So like, Sid, like coming from her experience and being thrusted into that dynamic, that made her tense up a little bit, because she just, you're in unfamiliar territory. You don't know, like same thing with me, my freshman year, you're in unfamiliar territory, you don't know. So you want to retreat and stick. So like, this was something for me, like I wanted to just stick to my friends on the team. Like I just wanted to cling because that was something I was comfortable with. That was something I was familiar with. But, the beauty of Notre Dame is that you get to rub shoulders with some of the brightest minds, some of the most unique people that this world has to offer. And that is really at your disposal. Whether you want to meet this person or not, it's definitely going to take a lot of humility, a lot of effort, and willingness to just understand people's experiences and take them for what it is, so you can learn to be a better person and go from there and grow together.
Daelin and Sydney, I appreciate what you both have said, and you both have turned a little bit to our life at Notre Dame. We all live on campus. We all have the chance to be a part of this university. I wonder, as you think about your time collectively at Notre Dame, how have you gone about deepening these types of commitments? Vulnerability, humility, these are not easy things for people to do. It's frankly easier just to kind of stay with people that make you feel comfortable. So how during your time here have you been really intentional and thoughtful about, okay, I'm pushing myself out of my comfort zone here, because at the end of the day, I'm going to be happy that I did it?
I remember there were a couple of times in certain classes, like discussion-based classes, where someone said something and that I disagreed with, and my immediate internal response was, this person is ridiculous. And I think I had to stop and take a deep breath and restructure my thinking and reform that this person is ridiculous into, okay, me and this person disagree on something. What is it that we're disagreeing on? And how can I better understand what they're saying? Because if I had just stuck with my initial internal, this person is ridiculous reaction, then I wouldn't have gained anything and that person wouldn't have gained anything. So I think just recognizing those initial gut reactions that you have and then reevaluating them and then trying to restructure them into a way that is useful and that can help you and the person that you're disagreeing with gain something from the interaction.
For me, I've always like been a person who, like, if I feel like something is fake, if I feel like somebody is like not being genuine, it doesn't penetrate. I can, you know what I'm saying? Like, just like anybody, everybody's BS meter is real, you know? And I found that, you know, the best way to capture the ear of my peers is to just speak from your heart. Obviously, you know, like in a controlled way, like to speak from your heart, like genuine things that you feel, because you never know how many people are going through the same thing that you're going through, that have the same opinion as you or may differ in opinion until you speak up. Because there's a lot of people that have those things in their mind that just won't say anything, whether they're not comfortable, whether they don't think they'll be heard out, whether they don't think that the majority will agree with them, until one person says something. And, you know, like that, for me, that's, you know, forcing myself out of a lot of uncomfortable situations, you know, putting myself in Hesburgh life. Like, I don't, like, there was times where I don't like necessarily want to go to Hesburgh when, you know, like after practice or whatever, but you know, you just go do it and you never know, like you might spark up a conversation, be around more students, being involved in our community, being involved through SAC, community service, being involved with like, just being involved with a lot of things and being as honest and being as real and genuine as possible. It's kind of like, you know, it's definitely something that you have to be continuously conscious of, to continuously put yourself out there, because it's just like not a natural thing to do. But I think just constantly being conscious of those things, putting yourself out there, being real, being authentic, speaking from your heart, and I think that you'll be surprised how many people will be able to like hear you out and share your side, or maybe not, and you guys can discuss it and kind of grow from there.
And it's interesting too, right? That sometimes even when people don't agree with you, you still respect them for the opinions that they hold, right? Like you have the chance to say, listen, we disagree with this, but I respect that person as a human being. Because we've
had some of the most passionate arguments in our locker room, man. Some of the most passionate arguments ever. But it's all good, because at the end of the day, you know what I'm saying? That's my brother. I understand. We agree to disagree on this, and then we move on.
Exactly.
So, yeah, exactly. It's a respect thing. You know, you may not share my opinion. I value you as a human. You value me as a human. Let's just go from there.
That's right. Sam, I'll kick it to you. Thoughts on your end?
Yeah, you know, after hearing what, you know, Sydney and Daelin both had to say, it really reminds me of Moreau, like my Moreau class, and I can't believe it reminds me of this, but I guess one of the prompts we had one time was literally about this, kind of like, how do you approach somebody, like you're going to approach somebody, like a student or somebody on campus, and y'all are gonna disagree, but how do you find a way to, like, obviously there's that disconnect, but how do you still connect with that person? Like, people are going to be different. Like, it's just how life is. Like, he's going to disagree with her and she's going to disagree with this girl. Like, that's just how life is. You're never going to always be on the same page, but it's kind of like, how, first of all, are you going to be willing enough to have the talk with them, which is hard. Like, that's hard for me. And I'm a very bubbly person. I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy having these conversations, but at the same time, it's like, especially if it's a new person, and like, especially like being a freshman here and obviously having to meet new people that I've never met before and stuff, it's kind of like when you get into conversations, sometimes it's like, you sort of want to hold back from saying some things because, well, first of all, you're just meeting this person. So you don't want them to sort of judge you off of a first impression if you're getting into some kind of deep conversation. But at the same time, it's like, trying to be a real person, because nobody wants to see some fake person. Like, they want to see the real you. And I think like that's kind of when it's hard for people is, are you going to be all the way real, this person, or are you just going to halfway it? Like, I don't know. I think that's kind of how I think about that. But yeah, it reminded me of my Moreau prompt. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like just being a real person is what's most important. And like Daelin said, like, just speak from your heart. Like, that's all you got to do, and just be real about it.
Sam, thank you. I'm gonna make a quick editorial note for anyone who's watching this. Hesburgh is the library, and then Moreau is the first year class that all first year students have to take, and they all love it, as Sam is demonstrating right here. No comment, Daelin or Sydney. I wonder, guys, as we begin to wrap this up a little bit, you know, one of the themes that's been so clearly hit here is speaking from your heart, authentically living. These are the great longings that human beings have. This is what we long for: to be known, to be loved, and to be loved for who we are. And yet, what we find in our society today is there are individuals who don't even get that shot. They don't even have that moment because they're judged based upon the color of their skin. They're judged based upon the type of clothing they wear, or the type of town, or the part of town in which they are found. And so as we think about these legitimate challenges that we face as a nation, what are your hopes? What are your hopes as you think about, you know, the months, the years ahead, the work that is to come? What would be your hope?
I know for us, man, on our team, you know, while you know, we have all types of guys from all different walks of life, but at the end of the day, we're united under the same goal, under the same values that Coach Kelly provides for us. And you know, at the end of the day, man, we love and invest in each other, and we grind together. We put in the work together. We love each other, and you know, color isn't even an issue. That's not. I mean, to say that it's not something, like it is a thing. But it's not a point of conflict for us, you know, like we love each other for who we are. Like, and, you know, that's not really something that comes to mind, you know, when I think about my teammates. If Kurt Heinrich calls me up in the middle of the night, best believe I'm going to go serve Kurt Heinrich just the way I'm going to serve Justin Adam. You know, like it doesn't matter. Like whoever it is, whoever needs me, Liam Meikenberg is going to get the same treatment that Kyle Hamilton would get, you know? Like, so it is what it is. Like, that's our brotherhood. And, you know, I would just hope that, you know, appreciate each other for each other's experiences, humble ourselves, and understand that though our experiences are different, that does not mean that you're more or less meaningful than I am. And we just move forward from there.
Thank you, Daelin. Sam or Sydney, I'll let one of you jump in on that.
I think I have like maybe 2 or 3 big themes that I would love to see come out of this. And I think the first one is just for everybody to feel safe in their communities. Just being able to live their lives to the fullest and not having to worry about whether or not, you know, they're just minding their business, whether or not they're going to get killed. I mean, recently, maybe like during winter break, I was driving in my neighborhood and I was going the speed limit and I was pulled over by a police officer, and he told me that, you know, I was driving really slowly and it was very suspicious. And I was like, well, you know, I'm driving 30 in a 30 and I live a block away. And he, you know, he responded that it seemed like I was scoping out the area. And I was like, well, that's not what was happening. And then he leaves, comes back, asks if I'd been drinking, just finding a way to make me just driving down the street in my own neighborhood be criminal. So I'm hoping that people going for a jog, people playing in their front yards, people, you know, going to the grocery store, I'm hoping that just doing those everyday things, that everybody can feel safe doing them. And I think the second big thing that I'm hoping comes out of all of this is just for people to feel empowered to speak up. I've said this plenty of times, that at this point, it's not enough to be quietly not racist. You have to be actively anti-racist. And if you see instances of racism in your everyday life, if it's safe for you to do so, then call it out immediately and just drive racism out of acceptable culture. Because to an extent, racism, we will give off the impression that racism is acceptable if we fail to call it out immediately. So I hope that throughout all of this, people feel empowered to use their voice and know that their voice matters, and that they feel empowered to take action. Because if we all buy into this and we all do everything that we can to just make race relations better, then its effect is monumental.
Thank you, Sydney. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think, or I hope for, I mean, obviously God made us all different by skin, but God made us all the same as a person. He wants us to live in his image. He wants us to love others. He wants us to show humility. And I think one of my biggest hopes is that we can all just find a way to just see through color and see through skin and see through those differences, and just know that we're all people. We're all children of God. We're all brothers and sisters. Like we all have that one love together. I think secondly, like, I hope that this shows that you don't have to be quiet. You have a voice. Every person has a voice, and it's just whether or not you want to use it, whether you want to, show the real you, project your voice and use it for the betterment of each other and for the betterment of our country. And, just take that to heart.
Sam, thank you. And so as we close, I want to say what my hope is. And I'm looking at three of them right here. Daelin, Sydney, Sam, thank you for your witness. Thank you for your articulate, passionate insights into a very difficult conversation, and for your willingness to be vulnerable in the midst of this. And so this wraps our third session of Fighting Irish Fellowship. Thank you all for being a part of this. And we're gonna wrap up at this time, but my great prayer is for everyone who's watching at home, be safe, use your voice, and go Irish.